Famed monster slayer Gabriel Van Helsing is dispatched to Transylvania to assist the last of the Valerius bloodline in defeating Count Dracula. Anna Valerius reveals that Dracula has formed an unholy alliance with Dr. Frankenstein's monster and is hell-bent on exacting a centuries-old curse on her family. Together, Anna and Van Helsing set out to destroy their common enemy, but uncover some unsettling secrets along the way. Welcome to another feature presentation of Midnight Double Feature, and in this episode we'll be covering 2004's Van Helsing, directed by Sommers.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Midnight Double Feature as we cover Van Helsing, and we're continuing our coverage, our October Halloween coverage. It's one of our favorite times of the year. Colin. This is when Colin is the most strongest before he becomes a little shriveled dick of a man in December, Christmas time.
Yeah.
How you doing, Colin?
I'm good. My powers are about as strong as my internet connection right now. I'm doing well.
Yes, we've had some technical issues this morning, unfortunately, but we've just recorded our Werewolf by Night episode. If you are interested in listening to that, you can go check it out. It's in our green room. It's just $5 a month to join the green room. You got a whole bunch of episodes. I think we're up to 57. I might be incorrect there, but we're up there, man. $5. That's it, and you can listen to all of that. So it's wild. But if you are wanting to support us and you don't want to pay me any money because look, times are tough. You can follow us on our socials. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can check out the links in the show notes on whatever app you're listening to. And look, man, that was a quick one. With that out of the way, let's do this. Let's jump into Van Helsing. Just a word of warning: this episode might be a little bit shorter. I'm wanting to cover this in a different bit of I can't talk. Different format than what you guys on the main feed might be used to. You guys on the bonus feed, you green roomers are more familiar with this. It's a bit of a shorter sort of like form. We're not going to go sort of like scene by scene, but we are going to break down the bigger sort of like moments of this movie, the bigger sort of like characteristics, talk about our history with this movie, talk about our how we came to find it, what we think of it.
Right.
The reason I'm covering this because the reason I'm covering it like this is because there's not that much meat on this bone. It's not like a Prisoners level episode. Mm-hmm. But I thought it is fundamental to Halloween. It covers every Universal movie monster. But I kind of wanted to talk about the action horror genre, like whether you like your horror with action in it, because for me it kind of like dilutes the experience of both experiences, but we can kind of get into that. But Colin, where did you find Van Helsing? How did it come to you? Because I know you at least have seen this movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I went and saw this in theaters actually. I think our whole family went, and it was okay. I even remember being 13, 14 when I saw it, that there was fundamental problems with it that I just could not get behind. You had to be a werewolf to fight Dracula, and I was like, okay, they're really bending a lot of the shit, and it kind of felt like Disney's version of like Van Helsing, like Dracula looks like he fell out of like the Black Parade lineup, like he's got this fucking ponytail and stuff, and everything was just very grandiose and like and staturing, and it seemed like a lot of the bad guys were just going. And then, like, not really doing anything. And I was like...
There are some outright fucking side-splitting moments.
Yes. This is one of the best unintentional comedies ever made.
Dude, particularly with the brides, whenever they're on screen or in the background, they're doing, like, some kind of, like, weird, like, dance move.
They're like that Simpsons episode, Eva Nedniash. But yeah, there are some outright laughably bad parts of this for sure.
Yes, definitely. I think I also watched this in cinemas. If not, we rented it from Blockbuster. As a kid, I fell in love with this movie. I was 11 when this came out, so it was perfect. this movie introduced me to the look of what a lot of these things are. So the Wolfman and Dracula. Every time I think of Dracula, I don't think of Gary Oldman. I think of Richard Roxburgh.
Oh my God.
I know. It's
That's
just
awful.
Yeah, how about you go fuck yourself, all right? You know what? Yeah.
Let me just turn this off real quick.
And yeah, I don't know. Like these things, it's interesting because like depending on when something hits you in your time of your life, then you'll kind of like carry that going forward. Frankenstein's monster as well. This is what I think of. Yeah, I know. I don't think
Jesus.
of
just because you
Karloff.
saw your grandmother, her robe slipped open and you saw a boob, that doesn't mean you have to think about that boob every time from then on out. You find the boob you want and think about.
I've got the boobs that I want. Thank you very much. But like,
start thinking about him, motherfucker.
Man, I don't know. Okay, look, I'm going to talk about Richard Roxburgh. By the way, he is a certified legend here. But this is an Australian movie, by the way. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. I mean, Hugh Jackman,
Really?
Richard Roxburgh. No, it's not. It's not. It was shot in like Romania and shit. But like, I want to think of it as a Australian film because Australian lead, Australian villain, David Wenham, also Faramir from Lord of the Rings. He was born here in New South Wales. But yeah, like Richard Roxburgh to me, he really kind of like embodies the Dracula look. Like you can talk about his acting in this. Like he is going big. Like he read the script and he's like, okay, all right, I'm gonna go big. I'm gonna go big for this one.
This guy makes Gary Oldman look
dude,
like peckish, like
subtle. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But there's something about the look, like his hair, like in the ponytail, and like the two things coming down, and like the black, like Welcome to the Black Parade jacket that turns, like the actual like front of the jacket turns into the wings of the vampire. Like it looks. There's something about the visual design of his Dracula that really kind of like sticks out to me and like really kind of like got stuck in my head for some reason. It stuck with me and I really dig it. I think a lot about this movie is directed by Stephen Sommers, as you've already mentioned, and it's definitely got the Mummy vibe, like the action adventure horror sort of like combination. Plus, you've got Alan Silvestri coming back from The Mummy Returns, so a lot of it sounds like The Mummy. A lot of it like sounds like the score is big and bombastic, and it's like you're supposed to have fun on this adventure.
Right.
The CG is very much like The Mummy, whereas like wherein it's like a lot of it is really decent, but most of it is garbage. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. A lot of it just barely touches the line of like minimal effort.
Yeah, exactly. The budget of this movie is $170 million, which is huge for a 2004 movie. I mean, like 2004, you got to throw yourself back. I mean, Spider-Man 2 and X-Men 2. And I mean, 170 and it made back 300 million. I mean, look, in my opinion, I think in the studio's opinion, that's a failure. You didn't double your budget. You didn't get back you probably got back like your marketing and all that stuff, but like I think the studio viewed this as a failure. Stephen Sommers though, he went on to make like G.I. Joe. He's kind of disappeared from the limelight now, unfortunately, but like he kind of like has this I think we talked about on the Mummy episode, but like he kind of has this action adventure mid 2000s thing about him where it's just like, man, that's kind of fun. I kind of want to be on that ride sometimes. Even like his G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra. It's a bad movie, but fun. I find it fun. I don't know. There's something about him, like in his movie making quality that feels so like earnest. Like it just seems so like, oh, this is very innocent. Like there's no,
Right.
you don't really need to apply that much thought to it. And this Van Helsing sort of like project, it uses historical things like like it uses like characters that were introduced in Dracula, like Van Helsing, and like, but then it also adds like religious elements to it as well. Like he's supposed to be the Archangel Gabriel, and like all of that stuff. Every time I mention religion, like Colin just sighs.
I would. First off, $170 million today would be about 267 million.
Yeah, it's nearly Endgame. Yeah,
that's fucking insane. I think this movie is awful. It's not awful, but it's past. It's more of a matter of taste than quality. The quality is there, I guess. For the most.
You know what? Get off your fucking high horse. You know what, dude?
There's a lot of movies I watched when I was a teenager, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then you come back and watch them as older adult, and you go, yeah, that movie's not that great. Sin City's not as good as I remember, And Van Helsing was one of those few movies I was 13 going, this fucking movie sucks. And I was so jaded and bitter by that age. I was just like, dude, I want to see some fucking heads getting ripped off and blah blah.
Yeah.
And it just felt like the kids' version of like it felt like what Monster Squad was trying to be in 1987, but it was being successful today. And it was just
what? Monster Squad's not this big budget sort of like action adventure movie.
It's juggling a lot of shit about like I think it takes all of the worst elements of something like Monster Squad, where it's just got a lot of these monsters, and I like what they do with Frankenstein, but they just a lot of the mythology is just bent and bowed, and it's like, and I'm not against making Van Helsing like a different character and doing different stuff, but I like the fact that it's like, yeah, crosses don't work, he just lights that thing on fire. I love that, but all in all, it felt like so goofy. A more successful version of a movie like this is Pirates of the Caribbean. Like when the moonlight fades away and Hugh Jackman turns into a normal guy, and then he turns back into a normal guy, and I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. But seeing them fight and turn into skeletons in the moonlight was amazing. It was inspiringly good. Like that's a better version of this movie to me, is like Pirates of the Caribbean. And I think that, God damn, it's 2.5 fucking hours long. Like, good Lord, that is insane.
It's 2 hours. Get the fuck.
Okay,
you know
it's
what?
2 hours and 11 minutes long.
It's 2 hours 6 minutes. Yeah,
that's 2 hours and 10 minutes.
I'll tell you what though, it feels long. Like it feels like I talked about this on the on the bonus episode we just recorded. I had this very very same experience with Black Adam just recently. It's a frenetically paced movie, and by the time you get to the second half, it's like, holy shit, I am exhausted, and we still have an hour to go. Like, right. I had that same reaction to this movie watching it again, and I haven't seen this in about a decade and a half. So this was kind of like an exercise in me, like being like, shit, man, I enjoyed this as a kid. Do I like this now? And I think the answer is, a lot of it is carried by nostalgia, because I recognize that this is a bad movie. This is a terrible movie.
Yeah.
But a lot of this is like, me and my brother would put this on pretty often and be like, man, like this is whatever. It's fun. It's fun time.
It's okay. It's a goofy, sloppy, silly kind of like everyone's like slipping on their like it's a goofy, fun little time. And like you said, I think Stephen Sommers, it's not, what is the meaning of Van Helsing? It's like, dude, you're barking up the wrong tree there. But the elements of just I don't know. You just felt like you were on a roller coaster ride, and I think that's the whole. If that's what you're going for, then yeah. I mean, I think that's he nailed it. But I think The Mummy and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen are like a great trilogy of movies that I think have a lot of potential. The Mummy, I think, succeeds more than the other ones, but there's still elements of that I don't love. But I think those are movies that just didn't quite hit the potential of like how amazing that they could be. But I love the first like 10 minutes of this movie. It's pretty good with the villagers and stuff. I liked it.
I wanted to take this. So we're not covering this sort of like sequentially, but I wanted to talk about that opening scene. In particular, because it opens in black and white, which is kind of ballsy for a movie like this.
Mm-hmm.
You get a $170 million like giant tentpole movie, and you're opening it recognizing what your inspirations are, which is the 30s and 40s Universal monster movies. But like it's immediately like big. Like the score is like dun 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 dun, and it's like it's Alan Silvestri like going really hard. And like you open at Frankenstein's castle, and the mob is like basically wanting to kill this monster, this abomination that Frankenstein has created. And like if you've read, have you read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, by the way?
I started to a long time ago, and I just couldn't finish it.
Okay. We had to read it for school. It's about as boring as you think it is. But look, if you've seen Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the Kenneth Branagh movie, then you know what the story is.
Yeah.
That's also not a great movie, but Robert De Niro is the monster, and is what it is. And
yeah, it's got John Cleese in there, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But again, whenever I think of Frankenstein, it's in this form. Dude, this guy needs to be... He's a fucking soprano in the opera, dude.
Yes.
Why?
Dude, all I could think of was, no! I was like,
Yeah, I like this conversation though between Dracula and Frankenstein though. Like Frankenstein's he's figuring out Dracula's purpose, which is to I guess reproduce, and he's trying to hide his like monster from him. And yeah, I like that. Stupid, but I like it. The fucking the lightning bolt crash, and you just get like a shot of the vampire. It's so bad, but I like it. I like it.
I mean,
give it to me.
There's something exactly like that in Monster Squad. I shit you not. And I
don't give a fuck, man. Just stop. Stop talking about these 80s movies that no one remembers, no one likes.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it didn't work in Monster Squad either. That's why I brought it up. As a kid, it's so fucking cool. And then when you go back and watch it, it's like that scene was pointless. They did a whole scene for that lightning flash, and this movie just did it like a passing thing, which is like at least it was quick.
Right.
But yeah, I enjoy all this this beginning part that the mortician, the guy with the top hat, Dean from LSG's looking rough. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I love you, buddy. Great podcast. LibertyShriekGeek.net. Enjoy. But no, that guy immediately. That's all I could think of. I was like, holy shit. That's all I could see from then on. And I would love to see him just rip that part to shreds.
Do you love like when Frankenstein monster goes up that windmill? Do you love that like every step he takes there's like a bottle of absinthe? Like someone's placed a bottle of absinthe like at every step.
This is where we put the town drunks.
Yeah, this is like where we've caged them up in this windmill. Can we talk about the brides? Because the brides in this movie are cringe.
Yeah.
They're bad.
Yeah, they're bad.
I mean, they're good to look at. They're good to look at.
That's just such a very shallow thing, It's very. I get it. That's what they're there for, And Dracula's not going to, Dracula's not marrying a fuggo, Like it's just not happening. Dracula's like, listen, I have to be with her for all eternity. I don't want to.
He makes the moves on Beckinsale, right? At one point,
right?
It's like,
hey,
why wouldn't you?
Blame him. Can't blame
him.
Why
wouldn't you?
Dracula and Pete Davidson, can't blame him. She looks amazing. She looks better now than she does in this movie, I think. Absolutely.
Dude.
Like
that woman ages backwards, man. It's insane.
Yeah. Like in this, I don't know. There's something about in this movie. I'm like, God, I can't, like, you're just so, I don't know. She looks like a Halloween costume. I can't get into it. And Hugh Jackman too. Apparently, he looks ridiculous. He looks like George Michael.
Apparently she hated the corsets. I
fucking blame her.
Ordered them. She ordered them to be burned. She's like, burn them.
Good. I don't blame her.
Yeah.
Fucking burn corsets. Those things gotta suck. But yeah, Hugh Jackman too. He looks like George Michael in a trench coat. You know.
Yeah, this was his. I mean, I guess this was during his breakout time, right? So like, this was after X-Men, but I think it was X-Men 2 and this movie that really sort of like blow him up into the stratosphere.
Right. Yeah. I think the only things he'd really been in were like X-Men and like Swordfish, maybe.
Ooh, I don't even know if Swordfish was out here. Maybe it was.
Oh yeah, it was definitely out by 04. I think that's like 2000. Like Swordfish was, maybe 01. No,
Swordfish. Yeah, it's 2001. Yeah.
Ooh, look at your boy.
Swordfish is retarded, but has some memorable moments.
I can't believe that's the guy that directed Gone in 60 Seconds.
Who?
The guy that did Swordfish, pretty sure is the guy that directed Gone in 60 Seconds.
Oh yeah, Dominic Sena. Yeah. Memphis, the guy that gave us Memphis Reigns. Yeah,
Memphis
okay.
Reigns. Hey, Delroy Lindo though, come on, he's like the best part of Gone in 60 Seconds.
Anyway,
and as Carlos corrected me, Shy McBride, not Chi McBride.
okay. Yeah. Look, but anyway, going back to
Giovanna
the
Ribisi. No, just keep talking about Gone in 60 Seconds.
Please don't let me relive that.
Zohan's like, this is how fast that podcast will end if you don't shut the fuck up. Like,
that was a rough week of my life preparing for that podcast and recording it. Recording it felt like went for 3 years, and yeah. Anyway, so the brides. One of them actually popped up in something else that so the black-haired one is married to Richard Roxburgh in real life.
okay.
And the first one that died, I think her name is Mariska. She pops up in one of my favorite video games of all time, dude. Need for Speed Most Wanted. That first Most Wanted, not the remake, not the Criterion remake, but the first one. Dude, that one is so good and is regarded as one of the best Need for Speed games ever. So she plays kind of like this. Like the whole story of that is like you working your way through like what's called the Blacklist 15, and it's just like these like 15 drivers, and it's like
I think I remember that.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. Yeah, she's in that movie. Sorry, she's in that game. But the last one, Alira, who has like the battle with like Kate Beckinsale at the end, she's so bad, man. There is a moment when like she meets. Remember when like they kidnap Anna? And, they kind of like meet with like Hugh Jackman and Frankenstein's monster. And
right.
She's like, yeah, we'll meet you at the ball, whatever. She does this thing where she like jumps out of frame and like behind a bridge. Oh. And it's like, ah.
It's like, go, power. Wow.
Dude, it's so bad. Why did he hold on that shot?
It's awful. And it's like broad daylight. I was like, dude, this is terrible. Like, I know we've established, that apparently clouds play a large chance of, mutation in this world. But at the same time, I was like, dude, that's really ballsy. Like, what if the sun just came out right now? Like, like what the fuck?
What's going on here? Yeah, there's a lot of moments in this movie where like the brides are just kind of like, yeah, like you said, gyrating and doing weird shit, and it's like, why are you doing this? Like, why? But like, they did take inspiration from Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Coppola movie.
Sure.
Because I think the wives, and I might be wrong, but I don't know if the wives were in the original book, right?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay. Because I know that they definitely took inspiration from that movie for the wives specifically. But like, because I really like the opening sequence, the black and white sequence in this movie. But in my mind, the opening extends to the Paris sequence as well, which is the Jekyll and Hyde sequence. And we can talk about Robbie Coltrane, because rest in peace, Robbie Coltrane.
Yeah.
That was a rough one. That was a rough one. Like, I woke up that morning and I was really busy. And, Steph had messaged me, and it didn't really click to me until after I'd like finished like my tasks for the day. And like, I was just like kind of like in bed, and I was like, man, like that's kind of hitting me. It's kind of fucking hitting me, that one.
Yeah. For me, he was always Valentine and Goldeneye. That's the first thing I saw him in. And he's a guy who's like, my
Colin,
leg aches.
just because you've seen one boob doesn't mean you have to take. Like I mean, he's Hagrid. Come on, man.
If it was a really good boob, then I'm gonna remember that boob. No, this is probably my favorite part of this entire movie. Honestly, is this opening part of him cutting his arm off, and so the design of Hyde is great. He is honestly the best CGI in the whole movie. I think he looks incredible. He's shadowed really well. Their fight is well choreographed. Like, he puts him in the bell and he takes those things and cuts himself out. I was like, I like that. Just the look of him and like the size of his like pecs when he's standing behind Hugh Jackman, and I was just like, dude, this guy is so physically intimidating. And I
also like that
design.
There's like this. Yeah, no, I love his design, but I also like that there's like this sort of like I know that they're like physically meeting each other for the first time, but there's like this history between them. He's like, "Oh, I missed you in London." He's like, "No, you did not." And he does the flex, and the bullet through his like bicep is awesome. But like, I like that there's this previous meeting between these two, and there's some history there. That was really I really appreciated that. But I also really really like him sort of falling off the church and turning into Mr. Jekyll.
Right.
Before he falls, which is great, which is awesome.
Yeah, he's like he's the dark universe, dark cinema, the DCU, the dark cinematic universe. He's the Hulk, I don't think in the novels or anything like the Doctor Strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I don't think he turns into Shrek, but I do think he just becomes like a bad dude who's like a little bit physically different. And I like this kind of take on him where they do turn him into like Andre the Giant. I think his design is rad. I love the
definitely looks like Andre
back.
the Giant. That's a good pull.
Yeah. The dude, like the sideburns, the one white eye. I'm like, dude.
Yeah, the mutton chops. I love it.
He looks so good.
Interestingly, Dr. Jekyll / Mr. Hyde is the only monster in this movie that is not universal. He's an MGM character, which is like they were like rivals.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if like it was like a rights thing. That's why they kind of like had to get him out of the movie so quick, sort of thing. But I don't know if that's
It could be.
Yeah. But also, I know you're familiar with the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and that movie also had Jekyll Hyde situation. I like that Jekyll Hyde a lot better. I like the actor that plays him in that movie.
Yes.
As well.
I wish they kept that actor as Dr. Jekyll, and this Mr. Hyde was in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, because I hate the giant, like he runs like this the whole time with the fake arms and stuff. He looks ridiculous. Yeah. But this, if they could put this in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, it were like, oh, he's got the strength of 10 men, and he's this giant. He's there, the Thing. He's not quite the Hulk, but the Thing, is pretty strong too.
We were just talking about Werewolf by Night, right? And we were just mentioning how the character, Gael Garcia Bernal plays that character, and he's sort of like nervous and like he's hiding a secret sort of thing. And, I feel like you could kind of like play Jekyll Hyde like that as well. Like,
yeah, very
I remember
similar.
in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Jason Fleming is the actor that plays him, and he's kind of like sort of like looking at like they're on a ship. I think it was like Captain Nemo's ship, and like he looks at a porthole, and like there's like the Hyde looking back at him, just like laughing.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, I love that shit, man. Like the duality of man sort of thing, and yeah, it's awesome. Before we started recording, I put out a little poll for the good people in the after party because I think, like you said, I think this movie, Van Helsing, and the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen are very, very similar. Like, taking Universal monster movies, and I think League of Extraordinary Gentlemen takes things a little further because you've got Tom Sawyer, right? And,
yeah, that's like literary figures more so than like horror things. Yeah.
Yeah, well, but you've also got like Mina Harker and stuff as well, right? Oh, I guess also that's literary as well.
Yeah. I think that's what Alan Moore was going for when he did it. I think it was just supposed to be English, like literary character. Maybe not all English. I don't know. I don't know if Mark Twain was English or not.
Right. I guess Alan Moore was also being in the news, pretty much being like, "Yeah, fuck Watchmen,"
Yeah, that guy. He's not happy with anything.
He's not happy with anything.
No.
But look, thank you so much to everyone who participated in the after party. So I put up a little thing. I was like, battle of the similar flops. Which one do you choose? Van Helsing or the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? What do you think the score is? What do you think won?
Which is better or which is worse?
Which one do they prefer?
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen to this? I'm going to say League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
You're correct. So 66% League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and then 34% Van Helsing.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's the Sean Connery of it all. Because, I mean, it's his last movie as well. He retired after that.
Yeah, and I think just visually, it's a much more striking movie than this one. I think it does a. If say what you will about that movie, its visuals definitely trump this for sure. I think it just has like a much darker, especially on like the streets of London and like the cobblestone. There's that reflecting light. There's just all this like darkness that I think looks really good in that movie. But this kind of feels like I don't know. They take that CGI and they put it right out in the center, and it's really lit up, except for like the Jekyll and Hyde thing. And yeah, I think it looks a lot better in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
That's a good point. I loved both movies growing up. Both of them were like really kind of like near and dear to me. I can't decide. I'm going to lean more towards Van Helsing. I think just because I like I think this is a little more fun. Like there's a little bit more of a entertainment value to this one. But interestingly, Richard Roxburgh is the villain in both movies.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, dude killed it. But yeah, look. So can we talk about Velkin in this movie and how terrible this actor is?
Yeah.
Find my gun! Find my gun!
I mean, I'll be honest.
Hurry! Okay.
Everybody kind of swings and misses in this. Hugh Jackman's pretty terrible in this at times. His accent just comes and goes. Kate Beckinsale's not too hot. The only guy that's great is
she's not too hot. Her accent is bad in this movie, by the way. I hate her accent in this.
Yeah, and it's like she, I don't know. It just makes me think of that Family Guy thing where Ben Affleck's like, "All right, I gotta be King Arthur. Hello, or I got it." I don't know. I think that maybe I can. There's elements of Hugh Jackman. I can tell he's trying in some parts of it, but it's just not enough. And I think it's just too. It's so goofy. And it'd be so hard as an actor to take any of this like very seriously and like get into it. So I'm sure they had to have known what kind of movie they were really getting into. Like I'm sure they weren't thinking like, oh, this is gonna be a real like thought character piece on Van Helsing. Like, no, not at all.
Something that I want to because I just mentioned Velkin. I had never seen this kind of werewolf transformation before. Like in terms of like ripping off the skin and underneath your skin is the fur. And I think like I read something with Stephen Sommers and he was like, yeah, like this is kind of like something that we put a little bit of thought in because like usually you see hair growing on skin. Usually the hair comes out of the skin when there's a transformation. Like, if you think back to American Werewolf in London or The Howling, the hair is always growing over the skin. Whereas like with this, I wanted it to be sort of like he sheds his human skin and underneath the skin is the beast. So it's kind of like the beast within sort of thing. And I'm just like, yeah, I really dig that take. like that's, like,
right.
The visual of Velkin kind of like, ripping off his skin and kind of like, doing like that sort of like backstroke up the wall is striking to me. Like that looks great to me. Like that looks awesome. I don't know if you agree.
I mean, I do like the whole, it's not just your body like expanding and contorting. There's a lot less like horror to the transformation. I feel like you being concerned for the person transforming. Like Werewolf by Night, you're concerned about that guy being turned into a werewolf. But this, not so much, because it just was like, oh, okay, you can just take your skin off and you're good. It looks cool. I do like the way it looks. But there's something that's one of the interesting things about the werewolf thing to me, is that it is this awful, painful thing of like, it's not like you just bust out of this thing like a cocoon. It's like, no, you got to take what you got and turn it into this thing. It's like, oh God, it makes your stomach churn, you know? Like that's part of like the horror of the werewolf, I guess.
Fuck you. Okay. just trying to like, just, you know what, man? You can just like, you know, so you right now what you're doing is like you're crouching and taking, like, you know, dropping your pants and just taking a load on my childhood right now.
Hey, well,
just taking a load. That's fine.
Hey, it's my childhood too, motherfucker. I was there. I was in the goddamn theater.
No, you were an old man by then.
Mentally,
you were like fucking
yeah. I was pretty much already there. I was like, nah, this movie sucks. And I think it's just because it was just you know, it was just this maybe I think this movie suffers almost from like the whiplash of the constant like chugga, like it's always
moving forward.
Oh,
yeah,
man,
like
Lord.
we don't get much slowdown at all, if anything. I mean, like
Right.
one of my favorite moments is when we're in the basement of like the church or like the Vatican or whatever, and we're just kind of like talking and sort of like we're it's kind of like Q showing Bond the gadgets,
Yes.
sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
I dig that. Like, you know, like, and you know what? I also really like that. God, I don't know how many times we talked about fucking religion today, but like, here we go. When we're in that basement, there's multiple religions down there. It's not just Catholic. Like someone says, "What in the name of Allah is wrong with you?" And I'm like, I like that idea. I like the idea of like this one, like we need to all unite to fucking fight these things for the greater good.
Right.
That's
awesome.
awesome.
There's like Christian monsters, you know, Muslim monsters, there's Jewish golems and stuff, you know, like different religions have different, you know, supernatural things going on in them. That's really cool.
And different beliefs. Like I know Michael, like the Archangel
all bullshit.
Michael.
Hey, that's really cool.
No, it is all bullshit. Yeah, I know, like that.
There's no God. Yeah.
No, there's no God doesn't exist. No, there is no God. I'm so glad we brought that back. It's been a while.
Yeah, there's no God.
I know that the Muslims refer to Gabriel as Jibril, and like he's kind of like the messenger from God, which is kind of like why in this movie he's sort of like the hand of God, or like
right. I caught that. Yeah, something left hand of God or what, right hand of God.
Right. So he's kind of like the action man for God.
Right. He's God's muscle.
But like, yeah, and they're not subtle about it either, because you know, Friar Tuck says, you know, you were at the Battle of whatever, and he's like, yeah, I was there, and it's like, what? That was fucking 74 AD, like. Bruh.
Yeah, Friar Tuck's probably the best part of this movie, to be honest.
Oh, I like him a lot. But by the way, gets laid. Get some ass doing this thing.
I remembered his. I haven't seen this movie. I mean, God knows how long. I may have seen this part a few times, but it has stuck with me because I laughed so hard in the theater when I was a kid. He's like, "You can't curse. You're a monk." He's like, "Actually, I can still curse. I'm just a monk." Damn it. And it always made me laugh and it still makes me laugh.
Damn it.
Yeah, it still makes me laugh my ass off. But
I love David Wenham. Whenever he shows up and stuff.
Oh, he's a fucking fox, dude. Google him. Good guy. I mean, for fuck's sake, he's in 300.
Dude, he's from Marrickville. Like, I mean, I'm in Marrickville pretty much all the time. Like, I mean, it's just here. Like,
I was like, you're like, he's from Marrickville. I'm like, all right.
All right. Yeah.
Was that like Candyland?
So, yeah. But yeah, dude, like every time, like I'm like, oh yeah, Joel Edgerton's in that. He's from Blacktown. Like, that's our suburb.
That's a terrible name.
I know. What else can we talk about this movie? Like how I think of Richard Roxburgh as Dracula, this is also the first thing I think of when I think werewolves. And I know that's blasphemous, but like,
Jesus Christ. Oh. I knew we always had a divide coming up. I just didn't know it was going to be this big. Oof,
This is
I
a
gotta
big
sit
rift.
down.
This is a big rift.
No,
Well, I mean,
it's your age. It's it's the time you.
but
grew
you and
up
I have
with, you
always
know?
had a divide when it's come to horror. Like this is a genre that's
Yeah.
always been like you and
Right.
I are worlds apart, and
Mhm.
action too.
Well,
Like,
you're born younger than me, but an older brother. I am the youngest of four. So I'm getting all this shit. You know, my oldest is 10 years older than me. I'm getting all this shit from the 80s and stuff, and
Right.
Final Destination and stuff like that. But I don't. Yeah, I mean, you were just like the prime age for this. Yeah, and I was too. But by then I saw too much shit too young, and had I
Right.
not seen that stuff, we would be having a very similar conversation.
No, dude, my childhood was all Robin Williams and Jim Carrey. Like, you know, like I didn't really have.
Same here. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really have this horror. Yeah, I didn't really have the 80s horror stuff to kind of like take me through it. I was introduced to like Freddy and Jason in 7th and 8th grade. Like, you know, didn't really catch all of that any younger than that. But I mean, like the design of this werewolf is again like the first thing that I think of because there's something about the size and the brutish nature of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's different designs of werewolves throughout werewolf movie history, right? I mean, let's say like American Werewolf in London is the classic example, but then one of the more unique ones that also comes to mind is the Prisoner of Azkaban one. I mean, like the really thin,
Oh yeah, Lupin. Yeah.
the really thin Lupin. Like I thought that was a really unique design.
I like it.
Yeah, but this is the one that really pops out to me because it's just ferocious and huge, and it looks like you could. It looks like it could fuck you up.
I don't mind it. It's a little underworldish for me, you know.
Oh right, okay. Well, I've never seen those movies, so that's why I'm not. Yeah, okay.
I think that it's just the high and tight head, you know, the very big eyes, the animation of it all kind of reminds. I've never really sat through a shit ton of underworld movies, but that's just what it reminds me of. Maybe it might be more the Beckinsale. But as far as like, I don't mind the design of the werewolves. I think the physicality of them is really cool. When he's fighting Dracula and he's just jumping up and grabbing his legs and just, I've always been a really big fan of werewolf movies. And I've always loved, you know, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is one of my favorite movies ever. Very nostalgic, very personal movie. And it's nothing but Lon Chaney and Bela Lugosi just jumping at each other for 6 minutes. And it's stupid. But, you know, this is like the total opposite of that. And I love it just as much. It's just him. He's like a gorilla in there, you know, and he's just like going from like thing to thing and jumping around. And I do enjoy the physicality of it. And I love, there's a couple of shots that I really do love when that werewolf jumps over the flaming carriage and it jumps on Van Helsing.
Yeah,
I enjoyed
and
some
it's
of
like
that
kind of
shit.
like you're looking up at him, sort of like in profile.
Or when Frankenstein flips out.
So you like this movie?
because
Is what
of
you're
the fire.
saying? Colin likes this movie. Colin likes this movie. You
I
heard
like
it here,
it.
everyone.
Yeah, Colin likes this movie. There is no God. No, I like I definitely like elements of it, like when the fire bursts in the carriage and Frankenstein freaks out. Like that's lore accurate. You know, I was like, oh, cool. Like that's like shoving the fire at Scarecrow. You know, from Wizard of Oz, he'd flip out. I was like, that's cool. And it has these brilliant moments of like care for the characters and stuff. But then, I don't know. The ending is shit. I hate that ending. It's like, well, I murdered a woman.
Ending. Is she in the clouds? Why is she in the clouds?
What is she, Captain Planet? She's one with the Earth now? Like, it's so fucking stupid. But it also, there's no arc for him. There's no arc for Van Helsing.
They just ride off into the.
They just ride off to murder more people and end more bloodlines.
But I love the music. Dun.
Yeah.
Dun. 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 Dun.
Well, and there's elements, there's great that music kicks in at the beginning when it shows him looking at the wanted poster and you see the half-built Eiffel Tower, and I was like, ooh, cool.
Yes.
Like I like this.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there I don't know, there's just this
by the way, another similarity, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, they also capture Hyde in Paris as well. So strange. Why Paris?
I guess, yeah, what is this? Early 1900s? Late 1800s, I think. This is like the time of Red Dead 2, I'm pretty sure. Like 1899, 1890s.
Oh, like Civil War times?
No. Civil
Oh,
War.
after.
Civil War had been done for a while because like in
Oh,
Red
okay,
Dead
okay.
2, that's like all the shit that you come across. I think it's been like 40 years. I can't remember.
Oh, right, like technical so yeah, the revolution. Yeah, okay.
Right, yeah. Um, but yeah, the Civil War started in like 1861. Yeah, so that would have been like 30 or
Dude,
40
did you
years
just
before.
get that from heart? Or like, are you like a historian? Did you
No,
remember
no,
that from school? Or
I
just
had to Google it. I knew it was about 40 years
okay?
from the end from Red Dead 2, and Red Dead 2 is 1899. So it's like, okay, 1850, 1840, and it was 1861. I was like, okay, cool. Like I was kind of right.
Yeah, well, I think
Uh,
of it like because in Django, when Django starts, it's like 1886, and it's like the Civil War has just ended, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, right.
okay, yeah, there you go. You learned something new.
Mm.
But but yeah, I mean, all in all, it's not an awful movie. You know, I think it does. It here's the
Not an
thing.
awful movie.
Like, have you ever seen when they test old planes in black and white and it barely flies for like half a minute and then it crashes?
Oh yeah,
That's this movie. This movie technically has a beginning, middle, and an end. It technically has a story and it has characters, but it's not very. I don't know. There's a lot of Deus Ex stuff, and there's a lot of just
a lot of swinging. Like I feel like that's
yeah.
that's a thing that we did in the early 2000s is swing from ropes a lot. Like I mean,
Yeah.
the Jekyll Hyde fight has a rope swing, and then we're in the ballroom that has a lot of rope swinging, and then at the end
Yes.
between the bridges and shit, there's a lot of rope swing. Why are we swinging on ropes? What are we all acrobats?
I think the term swashbuckling comes to mind, but at the same
Yep,
time it's
perfect.
not quite swashbuckling though, because this is more, it's like horror swashing. Like it's a little bit like it's not quite Indiana Jones. It's a scarier Indiana Jones, which is
I'd
kind of
argue
cool.
there's not a hint of horror in here.
There's
Okay, we can talk about let's talk about this because this is something that I want to talk about. I think the mixing of horror action dilutes both genres eventually. Maybe not
Yes.
the action one, but definitely the horror.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you can have horror if there's action in your movie. I feel like the action kind
Shaun
of
of
like
the Dead?
inherently makes it. But I don't see that as action at all. Like I mean, things happen.
No, because it's like I mean, God, the scene at the bar, like him shooting Pete in the head, like there's elements of action, but
Sure.
there's elements of it, and I think that because they don't use it too much, is that why once you hit that line of actually getting the action label slapped on you, that's when I feel like then you've got another misconception in your head because you're thinking like someone says, "Hey, it's a horror action." I'm like, so like Speed and Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm like, which is what are we talking about here? But if you say it's a horror with some parts, like Aliens is a horror, well, let's say Alien is a horror.
It's an
movie.
action
Aliens,
horror.
right?
Yeah.
Right. I'd say
Alien
is
is
more of
horror.
action.
Yeah.
Right.
But like, yeah, I mean, like, I think that's why movies like Resident Evil or like the Underworld movies have never really worked for me because they're always sort of like billed as the action horror genre, and like, I don't know, they've never really worked for me. Because I don't know, I think they're never scary, and like the action is always
No.
somewhat repetitive, and yeah,
Right,
I
it's
don't
like
know.
you get the worst of both worlds with those movies because the action, like you said, is just enough to get you by, and the horror is not scaring anybody but little kids. And
28
little
Days
kids,
Later. I mean, there's a bit of action in that, right?
yeah, there's quite a bit of
28
action
Weeks,
in that.
certainly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be done, but I think that it has to, like what we were talking about with Andor. Andor doesn't make a big deal out of the fact that it's taking place in a sci-fi fictional universe.
Right.
It just is, and I think that you take something like 28 Days Later. How can you not have an action scene in there? How can you not? It would be the most boring zombie movie ever.
Right.
And I think that there's certain genres that can pull it off well. Evil Dead, I would definitely consider an action horror movie, especially that last one. But that one's, again, it's so goofy. It's not to be scary or actiony. Yeah,
I guess it depends on what you define by action, though, right? I mean, like, because this action, Van Helsing's action with like this big bombastic music and
like Michael
like
Bay
these,
Pirates of the Caribbean action,
right? Oops, sorry. You're drop my pen. You're dropping. Sorry, you're stopping your story for things to happen for the next 10, 15 minutes that don't really have any implication on the story. It's just things happening. Like, it's just excitement. That's how I define this kind of action, which is not great action. Like, it's just like we're doing things to wake the audience up, essentially.
Right. It just seems kind of like the filler in between action scenes.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, maybe they're trying to have the best of both worlds. They're trying to make it not too scary for people, that they won't bring like a kid my age at the time or your age at the time to go see it. But also it has to have like action, and it's got to have like some romance. It's a family kind of movie for sure. I would definitely consider Van Helsing a fan. Like, I'm not going to sit there and I mean, maybe it wouldn't show like a 5-year-old this movie, maybe a little bit older, but it's not that scary at all. But I guess it depends on what's your definition of scary, It's not the worst movie ever made, but it's just, God, there's so much potential. This could have been a very awesome like X-Files Monster of the Week type show, which would be really cool. I would watch that. They're like, hey, they're doing a Van Helsing show where it's like Buffy meets X-Files and he hunts down monsters every week. Be like, oh, cool, I'm down. I'll be there.
Yeah, definitely. I had another point fucking loaded up, but you just kept talking like you always do, and
yeah, I just zoned out, and when I woke up, I was in my living room.
Forgot about my point that I was gonna make. I don't know.
Surprised I'm surprised that Hugh Jackman was able to bounce back from this movie. I mean,
it's not a career ender, right? It's not a.
It's a pretty bad fumble to have this early on. Because Swordfish has already come out. The only thing he's really got going on is like Kate and Leopold and X-Men. So he's not really got, I mean, unless he's done some Aussie stuff I don't really know about, which I'm sure there is. But I think that he's kind of he's 2-2 right now. He's not doing so hot.
Well, let's let's have a look. Let's have a look at his works.
I mean, Kate Beckinsale, I think she'd been working for a hot minute by this time.
Well, I mean, yeah, but like also like her husband is Len Wiseman. I mean, like it's the
who's that?
He directed the Underworld movies, and he directed the Total Recall movies. Like, she ends up a lot in his movies, like, kind of thing. Like,
gotcha.
Very much like Mila Jovovich, kind of with Resident Evil, because she's married to Paul W.S. Anderson, and he directs the Resident Evil movies. Damn it! I had a fucking. Hold on. Let me.
Well, you know what? You fucked it up.
Let's have a look at old Hughesy's.
Old IMDb.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. Oh, so he got a star in Blue Heelers, which is a big Australian TV show. But yeah, Oklahoma. So Oklahoma,
that's right,
was the movie that Stephen Sommers watched and was like, I want him in Van Helsing, even though the characters were like worlds apart. So X-Men was his big sort of breakout, as we've already mentioned. Someone Like You, never seen that, never heard of that.
Yeah, I think he got stuck in a rom-com pit there for a second.
That's a Greg Kinnear, Ashley Judd movie. Okay. Swordfish, Kate and Leopold, X-Men 2. Van Helsing, and then he did so he had 3 kind of flops in a row, sort of thing, because he had Swordfish, Van Helsing, then X-Men The Last Stand.
Yeah, but those movies are always, I don't give a fuck what happens. They're always going to be a success. People are always going to watch them. People,
but Black Adam's about to make $100 million over this weekend.
Warner Brothers better fucking hope to God it does, or they're going. Warner Brothers are going to die if that movie doesn't make any money. They've only
got 2 major releases this year in Don't Worry Darling, which is already flopped.
They had to like push back Aquaman 2 and like Black Adam because they were like, we don't have the money to like ad run these right now. Like,
we're bankrupt, bro.
Yeah, maybe don't buy Discovery. It's a bad idea. Or
But
did
then
Discovery by them? I don't know. Sorry.
in 2006 is when Hugh Jackman's sort of like career started to turn, right? So 2006, The Fountain, which is a Darren Aronofsky movie. 2006, The Prestige, which I would argue is probably one of his best performances ever. Happy Feet, which is the George Miller Jammy Jam. Yeah, and then that's kind of like when he starts to really, really take off. So I guess it's kind of like I guess it's his choices of taking on Darren Aronofsky and Chris Nolan and being like, yep, let's go. Let's do this. And then that's when he starts to.
Yeah.
Really.
I remember one of the last dates I went on with a girlfriend in high school was The Fountain. And like the next day we were like,
I've never seen it.
Oh, wow. It's a good movie. From what I remember, it's sad. I remember being profoundly sad. But I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I like Hugh Jackman. I'm glad it all worked out for him. But yeah, he definitely. But I guess that's not fair. Who doesn't have some swings and misses when they first start off with this stuff? But
what would you say is his best performance?
I mean, probably Logan or Prestige. I think, but I haven't seen. I mean, what is that big musical he did? Greatest Showman.
Oh, Greatest Showman. That's not a performance movie, but like yeah, for me, it's one of three. It's either Logan or Prestige or Prisoners. I think it might be Prisoners, to be honest.
Yeah, Prisoners is really damn good. I don't know. I love him in X2. He does such a good job in that.
Okay.
Just a special consideration for like as much room as they have to play with like those kind of characters in those movies. I think he does a great job. But yeah, Van Helsing, I think it's definitely got. It's super campy, and I think that I may be there's no way that Stephen Sommers is watching whatever Skarsgård brother this is playing Count Dracula. I don't know his fucking name. No, I'm just kidding. What's his name?
Don't you fucking dare! He's a legend. He's a legend here. Richard Roxburgh.
Okay. There's something about watching his acting that I'm like, there's no way as a director.
Dude, well, you've seen him before, right? You've seen this.
I've seen him
before?
in like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and stuff, but no, not a lot.
Mission Impossible 2, and he was in an adaptation of The Hound of Baskervilles. Fuck. What else? Oh, he was in a movie. Oh, just recently, he was in the Ron Howard movie called 13 Lives, about the Thai cave. Oh, you should watch that movie. It's a good movie.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
But it's just, I think
Elvis. He was in Elvis. Sorry.
Oh, there you go. I think it was just this movie was just too campy for for what it was. I think they build it as this kind of like dark, kind of like actiony kind of movie, and I guess it is that. But it definitely, it definitely has these bloated, kind of drawn out tension, like when the friar's on the bridge and the lightning strikes the bridge. I'm like, I don't need this. This movie's already too fucking long. I don't need this. And like, I laughed out loud when he's on the bridge and he's like, Anna, and she's like 400 yards away from him.
Far away.
She's and she swings in like fucking.
Do you love her catching the needle, and she does the heroic like kind of like she squints her eyes to make her look more determined because she's on her way to save the day.
I was hoping she caught it and she was like and like stuck herself with it. Yeah, it was the squinty eye and then the face, Yeah. And I just, good God, it did make me want a Hugh Jackman Tarzan movie because he's got those ripped up shorts and that long hair, and I was like, wow, somebody really missed the boat on Hugh Jackman being Tarzan. He's like perfect for it. I
finally remembered my point that I was going to make.
Oh, hit me with it.
One of my favorite elements of this movie. I guess is a holdover from The Mummy. Kevin J. O'Connor. How have we not talked about Kevin J. O'Connor yet?
Yeah, Benny.
Dude, Benny. Playing Benny again, basically.
Yeah. Oh, the voice gives him away in like a heartbeat.
Dude, when he like right at the beginning when he's like, you're a good man, doctor, but he pays me. Like that is the most Benny thing I've ever heard in my life.
Right. Yeah.
Also, Dracula pays you? I doubt it. I doubt
it. Yeah, he's like he pays him in like an old dead currency, that hasn't been around for like 2 centuries.
It's sir, this ruble went out like 500 years ago.
Yes, I have about 89,000 crush. I don't think I can redeem these.
Why does this coin have Vlad the Impaler on it? He hasn't been relevant since, Yeah.
But there's some cool.
Just one thing before we do move away from Kevin O'Connor.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
When he dies and he falls off the bridge,
that's what I was going to bring up, actually. Yeah, his death.
He's still doing the cattle prod.
Well, and it's like the stunted, like he's not like whale. He's just like,
dude,
he's just slowly falling.
When Friar Tuck is running across the bridge, and just out of the fog, you see Kevin J. O'Connor kind of like doing that run that he's doing, like he just came from the Special Olympics.
Oh yeah, he's got like the can't get right run, the twisted leg. There are like weird little parts of this I like, and I liked his death was weirdly, when it shows him falling, and it's like weirdly like, oh, that's rough. It just because you just fade into like nothing is like, gosh, that's pretty awful.
Also, I like the way the first 2 brides die. The first one in the village.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, that village where they shot, that's where they shot a lot of the classic Universal films. That village that's a set at Universal. I'll find which ones, but I think I'm pretty sure they shot Frankenstein there and Dracula, and might be wrong, but the Mummy. I might be wrong.
I've actually got this book about the classic Universal monsters and like how it all started.
That's cool.
A lot with like Lon Chaney and stuff like that. But there's just something I don't know, because to me it just cheapens like the change of like, the part of being the monster is the change. Whether you're werewolf or in this version the vampire turns into just this crazy winged thing. And I'm cool with that. I like it turning into something else. I don't like the design. But I think that because it's just like in and out of shadow and in and out of sunlight and stuff, it kind of, to me, it's like, God, how many times does Van Helsing from what is it? Probably the halfway point, Van Helsing finds out he's been bitten by a werewolf, and he probably changes 6 fucking times. Like, hell, he changes more times in this movie into a werewolf than her brother does the whole fucking thing.
Right. Well, at one point, even before he's got his powers, he kind of like grabs Anna and Friar Tuck and does like a massive jump over this like door, and it's like, whoa, how do your powers work, man?
Right. Well, and part of me also was watching this, and at the end I'm going, how did he kill her? What, he just crush her?
He just kind of like crushes her, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Like, it was just a weird, yeah.
Well, we don't want to hate him by the end of the movie, right? Like, you'll just be like, she fucking got like giant claw marks all over her face, and
he just bites her head off.
There was a lot of plans after this movie to maybe like make a sequel or something like this, but obviously it didn't do too well critically and financially, and I think they scrapped it. But they did make like a prequel sort of like animated movie.
Yeah, I've heard of this.
Yeah, it was called Van Helsing, the London Job, or the London something. I'll find it, but
like the London Contract or something.
The London Assignment. And yeah, they actually managed to get Hugh Jackman back, and they got Robbie Coltrane, and they got David Wenham. Because I think that is how, like, that's referred to at the beginning of the movie, like they're kind of like first brush, like Dr. Hyde's and
right.
Yeah. And then I think they made a Netflix TV show, a Van Helsing TV show, that's not related to this project. Yeah, you can find it.
Fuck, I never even heard of it.
So by December 2020, there was a reboot in development. Julius Avery, who directed Overlord, will serve as director, in addition to doing a rewrite of an original script by Eric Pearson. James Wan will serve as producer. The project will be a joint production between Universal Pictures and Atomic Monster Productions. That'd be cool. I'm excited for that.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think James Wan's doing some great work with this monster stuff.
Yes, and it really bums me out because like the Universal, it's time. It's kind of like the Universal monsters to me are the Titans of like horror movies. Like, well, no, Titans in the sense of like, they were just the first, Gaia and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And then later on, you have Zeus and Poseidon, and you get Freddy and Jason and Michael, and they become the new Rushmore. They're like the new gods of horror. And I think now we're like, it hasn't, when were these movies coming out? 50 years ago? It's almost been the same amount of time since these movies have come out. Nightmare on Elm Street was what, 84? It's been almost 40 years. Yeah. So here in the next 10 years, we're going to be having again another cycle of our incredibly iconic, like, and maybe it's not going to be Pennywise, and maybe it's going to be stuff more like Midsummer and Get Out, and that's fine. But I think that there's still plenty of room for the Universal monsters to play. There's still a lot of potential there that hasn't been tapped into, and I think that when it has been tapped into, it's been muddled and fuddled and kind of fucked up, like this and the Mummy reboot. The Mummy with Brendan Fraser is good, but those Scorpion King and those other two movies are trash. They're not very good at all. And I would love to see, imagine an Avengers movie, but it's like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but Nick Fury is hunting the monsters the whole time, and you're kind of on the monster sides like that. Like they could persuade you somehow to be on the monster side. I think that'd be really cool, because these characters aren't scary. You're right; they're more interesting than they are scary. Dracula is far more interesting to me than he would be scary, or Frankenstein, or Wolfman, or Invisible Man, the Mummy, Dr. Jekyll, the Invisible Woman, like all these great characters. I think there's plenty of room for them, and I definitely hope they have a resurgence and they eventually figure out that whole dark universe thing, because after watching Werewolf by Night, there's definitely more room for this kind of stuff.
I think that's a good point. Real quick though, modern horror movies, because you were talking about your Rushmore, and you stopped at Freddy and Jason and stuff. Let's talk about, well, who would you have on your Rushmore for modern horror movies?
I mean, are you talking about films or characters?
Characters. So, I've thought of two. I think King Paimon deserves to be up there. I think. Depends on like what form he takes.
Right.
King Paimon from Hereditary, if you're listening. The Babadook certainly I think deserves to be up there. Even though he's kind of like a sort of like a analogy for anxiety, depression, mental health.
I definitely think awesome. Skarsgård's Pennywise is up there.
Yeah,
for sure.
Good one. And I don't know how to. I don't know who to put up there. Like who to sculpt, whose face to sculpt.
I'm not saying I agree with it, but if I'm being objective, Jigsaw. That first movie is iconic. It's unbelievably good. Saw 2 is good. I think Saw 3 is actually not bad if I remember, but like any great horror franchise, they kind of get off track at some point, and that's okay. If you shouldn't disqualify Saw off of that. If we're doing that, we should disqualify Jason, Michael, and Freddy, and Leatherface as well. Those movies just get out of hand, and I think, but Saw definitely, but maybe that's not. I don't know. It depends on how you're counting that stuff, if you're counting early 2000s or if you're counting, from 2015 until now.
Right. We've talked so much on the podcast about how there's different types of horror now, right? I mean, like, right. I think there's a term going around that people hate called elevated horror, right? A lot of people don't love that term, but it looks like we're also sort of like bouncing back a little bit to the more sort of classical horror. Like, I mean, I've seen the Terrifier 2 is making a big sort of like play, and a lot of people like are talking about that movie. And Barbarian just came out here in Australia, so hoping to go check that out soon.
The guy that directed that was part of Whitest Kids with Trevor Moore. His name's Zach Kreger. Really, really, really funny guy. Very talented guy. Cool. I would love to have him on the show. Zach Kreger is really funny.
Well, do your part, man, because I'm getting all the gas and shit.
I tried. They don't talk to me. No, I would say I think just a really, really underrated. It Follows. I think It Follows
Yes,
is probably
I
one
like
of the
that a
best
lot.
horror movies made of the last like 50 years. It's just so
Yeah.
good, and it's original, and it's short. It's not over the top. It's just so tasteful.
Yeah. Well, Steph and I watched Hereditary. I mean, like she'd never seen it. I've seen it a couple times. We watched it last week, and yeah, she liked it a lot. She's like, that was super fucked up. And
Yeah.
yeah, she had to turn away a couple times, but yeah, she was pretty blown away by that.
I would say not that it's on my Rushmore, but a movie I always recommend to people if you want something good, really good and really interesting is Super Dark Times. Super Dark Times
Okay.
is basically I'll give you the premise is these kids are playing around with a sword. Somebody gets killed and they don't tell anybody. And it's like, ooh, and all of a sudden it's like little things start happening and the tension.
Sounds like
between
it'll
the
be on
friends
Shudder.
And it was on Shutter. Yeah, that's exactly where I saw it. But I think it's on a shit ton of stuff. But it's brilliant. It's a really, really good movie, and it's so unbelievable. It's got one of the guys from Ozark in it, but it's super, super underrated. Super Dark Times is a very good movie.
Oh, Jason Bateman. Okay, yeah, cool, nice.
Yeah. And it's set painstakingly, I think, in the early 1990s or late 80s. I think early 1990s or late 80s. No, because they're playing Twisted Metal at one point. So I think it's like late 90s, I think.
Late 90s, yeah. One movie that I really need to recommend, and I will cover this on the podcast one day because I really, really love it. And I think it's a modern ghost story that works really well and is really underseen is The Others with Nicole Kidman.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen that in a long time.
Fucking love that movie. Love that movie. Really, really well done. Yeah.
I was going to say something that's maybe not Rushmore, but still really, really solid lately is The Invisible Man. That was really good.
Yes.
That was a good. I don't think it's going to go down as like. I think I think in 20 years it's going to be one of those. Man, this movie's so underrated, because I felt like the heat came and then it just kind of like dropped off. Right. But yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about some more of those. There's cool. I need to watch some more recent horror movies. But what do you say? You want to wrap up and get out of here?
Yeah, man. That's pretty much for us. Pretty much it for us. I mean, we we're on different wavelengths here with Van Helsing, and I think it might be an age thing. It might be also where we are in the hierarchy of our family. Like, me being the oldest in the family and you being the youngest and inheriting things from your siblings and me having to discover things for mine. But like I enjoy this movie. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I had fun with it, even though it kind of like outstays its welcome. It's super long and it's super like the pacing is really bad. Yes, incredibly bloated. Yeah, some of the choices are just stupid. Like, why are we doing some of this stuff? But there's some really great unintentional comedy in this movie, particularly from the brides. Mariska killed the stranger. Like, it's like, wow. That was
pretty fucking goofy.
Yeah, I mean, like, who thought that line rating was good? I don't know. But
yeah, not me.
Anyway, that's us. Colin, anything else to say before we head out of here?
No. I think I've pretty much beat this movie enough. No, it's it's fun. It's a fun movie. It's fun, stupid popcorn adventure film. And if that's what you like, that's what you like. I just I just want a little bit more less camp and more character driven stuff. I think would be really interesting, but that's not what this movie is, and that's why it just doesn't clash with me well. But beyond that, it's fun. If you enjoy it, I don't blame you. At some point in time, I might have, but I just missed the boat on this one. But guys, with that out of the way, thank you for staying all the way to the end. This has been a lot of fun. We've had some technical issues, so it's been kind of up in the air trying to get this motherfucker recorded because my computer's a piece of shit. There's an E on this podcast, by the way. Colin's
recording on a potato.
Like, Yeah, I'm actually recording, rotating around the Earth at several thousand miles an hour.
Yeah, it's kind of like a it's a minor miracle that you've recorded as many episodes as you have, and we haven't. We've only lost collectively like 3 or 4 episodes, and that was because of another particular co-host.
Knock on this wood real quick. Yeah, no, I get very paranoid about that. So when I do have technical difficulties, I'm like, fuck. But hey, I'm glad to have it on any episode. It'd be this one. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode so far. Thanks for Thanks for supporting the show and listening all the way to the end. If you want to support us further, you can stop by patreon.com/midnight double feature. Check out the green room. It's $5 a month. We have about 50, 60 episodes in the can right now. You guys will get access to right away. You can also check out our other show, Bad Crystal, Breaking Bad podcast. Again, it's Bad Crystal, a Breaking Bad podcast, where Zoheb and I go through Breaking Bad, basically episode by episode, because I haven't seen it yet. He's kind of guides me by hand through that. And stop by, rate and review these shows on iTunes. It helps out the show tremendously. It's free, and it takes 5 minutes to give us those 5 stars. It helps out a lot. But guys, I hope you enjoyed all of this. I know we had a lot of fun recording it, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye!